Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattinwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep.
Oh, who are we going to explore with today? Well, it's going to be Moira Dempsey. And she is all the way from Australia. She is in British Columbia right now. But she's coming to Banff for the International Kinesiology Conference, September 23rd, 2015. September 23rd to September 27th, 2015. And she's going to be talking about some really interesting, cool stuff. Brain gym is one part of it, but she also has created this rhythmic movement training. And it is all about the importance of movement for combating stress and fear, and she's seen this applied to kids. She did a lot of work. She won a humanitarian award for her work in Asia after the tsunami a number of years ago. She also is seeing this work being used with post-traumatic stress with vets. She's seeing it with people in their everyday lives to find ways to get over stress and move past the fears. It was a really interesting chat, and I think you're going to really enjoy this. The book itself is available on Amazon. It's called Movements That Heal with Harold Blumberg is the last name, and she's a co-author of this book, and you can get it through Amazon, and the links on lgrcc.com under Inspiring Guests show Moira's profile, and the link is there as well, so you can get it that way. And this is just going to be so amazing to have this information shared at the conference, because there's going to be so many practitioners there from all different modalities, including lay people, because it is open to the public, and I believe there's still time to register. So get yourself over there to celebrate2015.com if you want to come and you want to see what workshops are happening around it and who the speakers are. You can do it for like one day, or you can do for the whole conference. There's different rates for that. So, and it's in Banff, Alberta, Canada. How do you get better than that? All right, so let's get into this chat right now and find out more about Moira and how she's seen this information being applied in real life, in real time, right now. Welcome to Let's Get Real, Chatting with Catherine, and who we're going to explore with today is Moira Dempsey, and she's all the way from Australia here for the International Kinesiology Conference that's going to be held in Banff, Alberta, Canada. It's September 23rd to the 27th. She's one of the presenters and speakers, and she's she's in British Columbia right now, but she's making her way towards the Rockies. Welcome to the show today, Moira.
Thank you, Catherine. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be on the planet. I keep saying that, but I just can't get over my excitement, my enthusiasm for how we're able to connect with people all over the world, and all this wisdom and shift and change that's happening. That is, I feel like I see a better future because of it. So I'm super excited to be able to be a partner in this with this kinesiology conference and meeting amazing people like you doing amazing work. Now, one of the things that Moira, you're the co-author of a book that's out called Movements That Heal with Harold Blumberg. Okay, sorry. And that's, really intriguing, the whole movements that heal, that concept of movement itself. And I'd like to, although I want to talk about the book, I would like to talk about how you got into this whole, even if it's a condensed form, because people like to hear the backstory, like, who is this woman? Where did she, what led you to this?
Around about, I guess it was the early 1990s, I'd been living in Malaysia, in Sarawak, in Borneo, Malaysia, and I'd gone back to Australia, I thought, permanently, and I wasn't well. I was really depressed. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was didn't know why I was on the planet, and I was at a place called Ontos, which is up in the mountains in Victoria, the state I live in, and there was a little notice on the wall, and it said, "Are you stressed? Are you depressed? Do educational kinesiology." And I went, "Oh, I guess that's close. Well, I'll do that." And it was like I had no idea what this person was doing, but it was that, I call it the hour that changed my life, because it was like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I had no idea what direction it was going to, but it was like there was something there that was very physical. It was kinesiology, and I couldn't work out why I couldn't keep my arm up. I couldn't work out all these things, but that's where it started for me. So that, I think that was about 1991, and so I did a couple of classes then. That's when I sort of knew everything. And then I actually went back to Malaysia, to Sarawak, and for a few years, and then went to Singapore. And when I went to Singapore in 20 years ago, 1995, I was able to start my Educate and Touch for Health training again, and became an instructor in brain gym in I think it was 1996 or 1997, and then from that grew this interest in primitive reflexes and this role. So from this, what is the role of movement at the basis of so much of what we do? So because for me, so much of when we get stuck, it's because we can't move, and so and this role of movement in laying that foundation for the rest of our life, this physical up as opposed to the mental down. Because so much of what I did before 1991 was from, like, just think yourself to be well, and that just wasn't working. It was only when I realised how imbalanced my posture was and my body was, and that I worked from that way, that I was able to start doing anything. And while I still have a long way to go, I probably
but
place.
we all do. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, we all do. We're works in progress, all of us, as long as we're on this planet. But I think, and I just did a show with Matthew Thie, who's the son of the founder of Touch for Health, Dr. John Thie, and he really gave us some great insight into what that's all about. And I really like that you just kept going. It's like you started with are you stressed? Those questions: are you stressed? Are you depressed? Well, those are the big factors. I mean, stress is huge, and we have it everywhere. We're and we don't really. The stress has increased, and we haven't really increased our tools to deal with it. And so the idea of think yourself well. I mean, there's power in positive thinking, but you've got to put that thinking into action. That's right.
And so if we look, so for me, when I look at what babies do, and babies only have movement, they don't, and movement that activates senses, and that builds our neurology, and that gives me that foundation for life. So the book was called Movements That Heal, because if we put movement in at a very foundational level into the way we work with people, and we look at posture and we look at that things, then the emotional parts can become different, and the mental part and the thought parts can become different as well. But when we leave the physical out of it, then we're not getting to the foundation of what we need to do.
Yes, and that's interesting when you're talking about babies and the movement, and if we leave them to be their natural, in their doing what they naturally do, they're going to move and develop and all that kind of stuff. And then we kind of, and this isn't about judgment, but it is about our reality of our society. We then kind of stop the movement. We put them into a classroom, in a chair. You must sit in this, and then we do the same thing. You get out of school, sit in a desk, or you sit in, a confined space where movement is no longer. I mean, the most movement a lot of people are doing today is on their keyboards and with their iPhones and such. So,
and we also look in rhythmic movement. We also look at the movement from before birth. So how babies are not even getting, the fetuses and the embryos are not getting the movements that they need before birth, because mothers aren't moving as much as they did, and we have a lot more electromagnetic fields, and there's stress around work and those sort of things, and then you're not necessarily getting movement during birth because we have more and more elective cesareans. Right. So the movement through birth is important, as well as that first, especially 4 to 6 months after birth, how we start. As a baby, we're meant to start to learn to control our own bodies, and babies aren't getting that because they're put into equipment, and the equipment's teaching them to be upright. And so we're not learning it for ourselves from before birth and the movement of the mother. During birth, for many people, you're not getting it, and then after birth. So while we're getting some form of neurology built and posture built, it's being done through other ways. And now we put babies in front of computers and screens to keep them quiet, because we live in a world that values being quiet and being still. But whereas we have to develop that ability, and so we get babies to be quiet and still by locking them down, and that becomes their pattern through life.
Yeah.
And so I don't learn how to do it myself and postural control, and I don't learn that ability to be still and to focus and pay attention when I need to. It's all being done through equipment or machines. And, computers are great and they can do wonderful things for us. However, we're not necessarily building what we need, first of all, to really understand that they're a tool as opposed to they do everything for us.
Right, exactly. And there's a time and place for everything about balance. And I think that's true, too, is that we have to be aware of our environment, because we do restrain children a lot in for safety reasons, and you just don't let your kids go out and run in the backyard anymore because of safety reasons, and on and on. So we have to be cognizant of both, and that's, I think, what you're talking about, which is important.
It's interesting because one of the role of infant reflexes and primitive reflexes and movement is to give me the fundamentals and the foundation and the basis to learning how to be safe in the world. Mm-hmm. And we're not doing that. And we have adults who don't feel safe, and they're teaching children not to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming harder and harder to learn that in yourself. You don't feel it in your body because you haven't learned how to do it. Then you don't feel it in your emotions, and you don't feel it in your thought. And then it's this, don't let your children outside, don't let them do anything, don't let them interact. And we're living in a world that's not necessarily less safe, we just think it is.
Yeah, it appears that way because we're behaving that way, and those are the messages we're giving to the next generation, which is really interesting. And also, I think you pointed out to another thing, which is developing their own sense of awareness of, like when I was a child, I remember walking to school, for instance, with my girlfriends. We weren't always that old, maybe 9, 10, 11, whatever. And
when I was 5 to 6 walking to school.
Yeah, exactly. But you knew, you were with, siblings or a couple of friends.
Walking to school and.
Yeah, but you knew enough I remember, without ever saying anything to whoever I was walking with, somebody walking towards us or behind us or whatever, and we would just start moving onto the other side of the street, or we would, we were aware of our environment because we were living in it. I mean, we had to, we went out in the morning and came home, when the street lights went on sometimes, right? So
you may have had a mother like mine who said, "Don't come back until I tell you to. Let's hope there's still some light there."
Yeah, I know. It was different, and children did learn about our environments, and it wasn't always great, but we definitely learned certain skills that we're kind of protecting our children from learning about their environment and even their own bodies, by restraining them all the time in different, for different reasons, of course. Okay. But so you've written this book, and you're actually the founder of the Rhythmic. There's a program called Rhythmic Movement Training.
Yeah, so founder of Rhythmic Movement Training International, which is an organisation that promotes rhythmic movement training and does the training for our instructors and providers around the world. So we're in about 22 countries, I think, at the moment.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of scary, really.
When you think about from that one pivotal moment when you said, "Am I stressed and am I depressed?" And that question is, I mean, that's how the universe works. It's the light bulb comes on, and then you move in, and you're bringing this gift to so many other people. So you have people teaching these courses, practitioners that are actually. So who are the courses for? Are they for children or for adults or for everybody?
We have a series of courses. So they're for adults. Some adults who, of course, people who work with children or with adults who have learning or emotional behavioural challenges of various, labels, whatever they are, ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, schizophrenia, psychosis. So you've got people like, kinesiologists, some occupational therapists, physiotherapists, physical therapists. We have mental health practitioners, neurodevelopmentalists, specialists, some nurses, some people who work in allied health. We work teachers, preschool teachers. So we have various people around the world. And so my background, I was a teacher, but I also became a kinesiologist. So that's my background, and I brought that part to the training but it's expanded away from just kinesiologists now into many varied fields around the world, because people find it a very useful program, because you can use just a little bit, or you can use a lot. You can use it with everything else or you can use it by yourself. So it's very how I've done the program is very educational. It's not medical. It's very much about drawing out and noticing and observing. And you can use muscle checking, the tool of kinesiologists, if you know it, or if not, you can use observation and noticing to work with people and to get them also to understand what's happening for them. So for me, a big component of it is to that self-education part, which you probably talked about with Matthew, and John Thee was very much about that self-education and that self-awareness.
Yeah, and owning being responsible for your own self. Yeah.
And sometimes we have to learn that. If we don't have it, we actually have to learn that. And if we can feel it in the body, and if we start to understand what happens to us when we get stressed, what happens to us, then we can start to do something about it.
Yeah, being aware.
Acting.
Being aware that this, I'm feeling stressed, or sometimes we don't even have the right words, the right understanding. What are we feeling? We're so out of touch with our body and the signs and what have you. I mean, I know lots of times through life, you've got things to do and you don't listen to your body giving you different signs, and so is the book for everyone, or is it for practitioners?
No, it's for everyone. It's for everyone, and I hope reasonably easy to understand. And so it's about the movements and about reflexes and why it's working a little bit. I'm in the process I've started to write another one.
Good for you.
It has a working title of Beyond the Sea Squirt, but that's my myself. Some people understand it, some people don't.
What did you call it?
Beyond the Sea Squirt.
Beyond the Sea Squirt.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Would you like me to explain it?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
All right. So, one of the ideas around is that the only reason that we really have a brain is because it controls the central nervous system. So the only reason we really have a brain, we need one, is because we move. And so sea squirts are little creatures that swim around in the ocean and then sort of one day decide, I'm not going to move anymore. I'm not going to swim around anymore. And they plant themselves down on a rock or something under the sea, and they don't need to move anymore. So what they do is that the first thing they do is consume their very, very primitive brain and spinal cord, because they don't need it anymore because they're not going to move.
That's a very good title.
Maybe some of us have learned to be couch potatoes and we're consuming our own brain and spinal system. So maybe we need to go beyond the C-squared.
I love that title. And I love the fact that it makes people curious because it did me. You know, it's like, yeah, I want to know, what does she mean by that?
That's right.
Yeah. So the book, Movements That Heal, is that
Amazon or Book Depository or something like that.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. If they go to your website, will they find the links there?
You can find the link there to Amazon so you can go to rhythmicmovement.com and find it there.
Yeah.
And I think our new web person, thank you, has made a Movements That Heal page, and that you can go link there too.
Do you have any instructors, practitioners using it in Canada right now?
We have 2 instructors in Canada, one in British Columbia and one in Ontario, so Sault Ste. Marie.
Sault Ste. Marie, yes.
Sault Ste. Marie, and we have as you know, my Canadian is terrible. Hey.
My Australian's not great either.
And then we have someone who's training in Quebec. I was just in Quebec. We have a few providers as well, people who have done some of the training and use it within their work.
Wonderful.
So we have, and there's a number of people in Calgary who've done the classes. So there's a number of people who've done the classes and who are leading up to doing more.
Okay, all right, that's fantastic. So so after the book, and you're working on this new book, and you're going to be in Banff. You're touring around everywhere, apparently.
Well, yes, I do. I say I live in Melbourne, Australia, but and I'm there sometimes.
And that's kind of nice. Every so often pop in for a visit. Now, one of the
I'm not likely to be there. However, feel free to.
I meant you pop in for a visit. But so one of the other things that is on your profile page that I've set up on lgrcc.com under Inspiring Guests is the Brain Gym. And now I have heard that referred to a few times by different people, and I have to confess, I don't know what Brain Gym is, and I would really love it. I've not had anyone explain it yet, and it would be really great if it's not a test, Moira. I just if for the lay person or the practitioner who's interested, what is Brain Gym?
Well, Brain Gym is it's really the movement part of a program called Educational Kinesiology, and Brain Gym itself. So there's a course called Brain Gym 101 that gives the foundations of educational kinesiology, and so Brain Gym itself are a set of movements that support this process. So it's a 5-step process,
right,
that allows us to move from where I was and with an intention to move to another place. So, for example, if I'm very simple, I want to have neat, say I'm a child, I want to have neat handwriting. So your goal would be to have neat handwriting, for example. Right. So I start with where I am, and then we work out what movements, what dimension. And so it looks at dimensions. It looks at our laterality, our side to side. It looks at our upper and lower dimensions, how we relate between the upper and lower parts of ourselves and the back and front, and relate that also to the brain, and use movements to help the body to create a very different feeling and pattern within the system. So very much like rhythmic movement, Brain Gym, because that was my background when I started to put the rhythmic movements together, was to look at how do I get stuck? What patterns do I have that keep me in that behaviour or that activity going around there? And so what can we, and because movement is very much the basis of our learning, right, and setting something up and and creating change in neurology, can I use movement in this very intentional way to allow us to move on and create a new pattern that the brain then recognises as, oh, you want me to do this now? I can do that. And so the system can move from one place to another And so you go to good brain gym practitioners, and they can, and experienced, or even new ones, they can look at, this is where I was, what do I need to do to change that pattern to come to here? Where do I get stuck in the system? Do I get stuck passing information across the two hemispheres, or do I get stuck in survival? Do I get stuck in my emotions? Do I get stuck in my beliefs? And we can move through that, and because it is about movement. So the movements themselves are there. The movements support the process.
So they're like building blocks.
They're like building blocks in some ways, yes. And so you have some movements that help with our energetic self and calming ourselves down. You have some that work with connecting the left and right, and you have some movements that help with our ability to focus and bring out of our survival part of our brain into our ability to focus and pay attention at this front part of the brain, and so then so that helps to build posture and attention and our ability to communicate. So there's in brain gym, in the basic levels, you have these 3 dimensions. One's about communication, and one's about centering, and one's about focus. And where's the combination that we need to come together? And of course, you can then go into a more in-depth part of it as well. You could add further dimensions. So sure. That's about that's my understanding of what it is.
Okay, and so is brain gym something that we would use for with children in teaching children, or is it something that for does it also apply to adults, or is it both, or who's it for?
Well, see, it's how I came to this whole thing. So for me, it was the therapy I used to start creating change. So for me, I see that educational kinesiology, which is the broad part of it, is this transformative process that allows me to transform from where I was into something else. Now, it is used by many people as movements in schools, as ways of working with children to get them ready for learning and different aspects of it. However, for me, I did brain gym for a long time, very successfully in Singapore and other places. But for me, it was always very much about that expansion of being able to change those patterns in myself to create a new way of doing it. And so I know many people do it with groups of children. I've always worked a lot better with one-on-one, either with children or adults, using it as a transformational.
So are they using it in classrooms too then?
They are. They use it in classrooms in many places around the world as a way of getting children ready for learning. Of course, sometimes many children need a bit more one-on-one, and I know there are some schools who offer that ability with people who are trained in brain gym to see children one-on-one.
But if it's not in your school, is it something that as a parent you could access?
Yes. Absolutely, and you could, and I mean, I think if you go to the braingym.org website, there's people all around the world who do this, and you can find a practitioner somewhere, one-on-one. If you've got a group of friends, you could get someone to come and teach a class to you, even if it's just the movements and not the whole extended class about how to put it together in dimensions and things. So most of the practitioners I know are quite willing to put together a class for you as a one-day class or something like that.
It's nice to know these tools are available to
and children tend to like them, you see, so
sure.
that unless you use it as punishment. I do not recommend using it saying, you're doing this, go and do your brain gym. No. Then it stops being effective.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of how a lot of kids got turned off music lessons, and when they're children, they loved music, and then they get into it, and it became a job that they had to do, and I actually know people that took lessons all the way through school, and as soon as they stopped the lessons and they were out of their parents' control, they never touched a piano afterwards, or so you don't want it to be that.
It's not, and so that's the whole thing. Anytime we use something as a punishment, we're going to lose you. at some point or other.
Sure, of course. And so, are you doing a workshop at around the conference, or is it just
No, I'm not now. I was going to, but no, it's been cancelled, I believe. So I'm going to go and attend someone's workshop.
Oh, very cool! How very cool. Okay,
yes.
well, and
I am doing a presentation.
Yes.
In the workshop. Yes.
Yes.
In the conference. Yes.
Yes. And there's actually several people who are going to be speaking, but there's also and there's also workshops before and after and whatever, and all that information is on their website, celebrate2015.com. You can get for people to get the full listing. I'm just wondering, as part of this kind of work that you've been doing, was there? You received the humanitarian award for your work in Asia after the tsunami. I wondered.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise, that one.
It's beautiful. That's a wonderful acknowledgement of something that, when you do something. Usually you're motivated to do it, not for the awards, but it's nice to get acknowledgement afterwards. Of course, what was that all about?
It's so long ago, that tsunami, it's 11 years, it's nearly 12 years.
It's amazing.
So I was living in Singapore, and the tsunami happened, like on Boxing Day, and it was such a big shock. But Singapore wasn't affected, but so much of the region was, and yes. So a brain gym instructor, Henry Ramanli in Indonesia, was determined to do something. So he went to Medan, which is on Sumatra, on the other side of Sumatra, to Aceh, and thought, what can I do? And a couple of other people, they were able to go into Aceh, and they started to just do things, whatever they could with the people who were there, wherever they could get to. They just somehow got into regions that were difficult and came back. And then he and another friend of mine in Singapore, Tan Lian, and Henry said they were going to find some way to get into Aceh, Banda Aceh, which is where a lot of the destruction happened in Indonesia. And they went to Medan, they went back to Medan, and they started knocking on doors of all of these organisations saying, we're putting this program together, we're putting this brain gym program together, and we'd like to do something. And eventually they found an organisation who was prepared to let them try. So there were people who were coming across from Aceh, and they were helping them. And so Henry and Leanne, first of all, did this program, and it was quite effective. And they said, okay, so do you want to... How about we arrange for you to go to Aceh? And then they said, well, we want to see if Moira can come with it as well. So we put a program together, and this organisation, which is a long time ago, so I can't remember the name,
yes.
Arranged for us to get permission to go to Aceh, because you had to, there'd been a civil war there. You actually had to have permission to go there because it was a closed area of Indonesia. And so Henry and Leanne and I put together this program, and we were able to go across there and teach groups. We taught midwives, and we taught the psychologists at the hospital, who were also very stressed and traumatized themselves. So we were able to work with them. Some people in the camp. So we were there for about 6 days, and we went to these various places and gave out supplies to kids, like colouring pencils, because they were getting a lot of food and clothes, but they weren't getting toys and things. So we took toys, and we took things to keep kids occupied. Sure. And we taught and we worked one-on-one with some people, and then we taught people this. We put together a little program based on brain gym that we taught for trauma, that we taught to people, and said, when you go under trauma, you can start to do this. Nice. And the feedback was very positive about that program. So I really think that the award was more should be for Henry and Leanne, because they just went and knocked on doors in Medan and said, until they found some.
I think there's lots of room for praise and acknowledgement. It's not it's not one or the other. It can always be many. And that many hands make light work. And it's always been that way. But I think it's amazing to see how these kinds of tools work in trauma and stress situations. We have a lot of that going on, on the planet at this time, as we're going through so many big changes, and so to know that there's tools available is fantastic.
You And I think it's sometimes getting that word out that if we, because we're not always well known, we're not Red Cross and we're not that, but if we can find a way to even set up within, well, in my area, the kinesiology area, this, like, here's our kit, 2 months or a month later, let's go in there and still work with people in this trauma, because they won't let you in, first of all, because but, or if you can get there, here's this kit. This is what you can do. We've already put something together that worked, and if you're going there, would you like to use it? That would be great for all kinesiologists to be able to work together to do that. And,
absolutely.
Like an emergency response team.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even knowing that this is available and being, prepared so that we can, more and more people become prepared and know that, because the thing about stress and trauma and shock is we tend to not move. That's the first thing we do is it's reserve, pull ourselves tight and tense up and hold it so that in a protective mode. So that's, when it's a major thing that's happening, whether it's a natural disaster or wars or what have you, that would, and if a mother's feeling that, then her children are feeling that, and it's just, the community feels it. So this is to me, looks like a really great tool for our time.
Right. So that's really what we do. We look at that sort of thing, that these people who are stuck in that freeze response. And,
yes.
There are some people working with veterans with PTSD who've got stuck into that freeze response.
Sure.
And then the only way out of it is to attack. So that it's sort of like, can we get that balance back so I don't have to freeze, attack? Can I actually get back into stopping that amygdala from firing all the time?
Yeah.
And to get back into the prefrontal cortex where I can see that it's safe and I can do that, because I'm not stuck. I'm stuck in this survival response.
So do you have people that are using these techniques working like in all the different veterans around the world?
Well, I've been, people tell me they're going to do it, and all I can do is say, let me know how it goes.
Sure.
And,
it's fairly new then for in
right.
that capacity.
Yes. So,
okay.
It is new, and so some people, rightfully skeptical. Let's see how it goes first of all, and when they find that it works, then it gets easier and easier to go into these organisations.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about you sharing this information at the conference, because there's going to be so many practitioners from all different modalities, all different, orthodox medicine to lay people to, kinesiologists and naturopaths and everybody in between. The presenters are from all over the world. So, it's great to be able to share in this way. That's what I love about conferences like this, because it brings together all these people who are on the leading edge of things that can help us to do things better. So, was there anything else that you really are feeling like you really want to share with people, Moira?
Well, my talk at the conference is called The Foundations of Fear. And so it's looking at the role that primitive reflexes play if they're retained in the system that do freeze us and get us stuck in there. And so this role of these primitive reflexes and what happens when they don't completely do their job, or when, because of traumatic situations, come back and reactivate to help us survive this situation, but then get stuck. And so how, and when we can recognize this in the body, and how we can then move it on. So that's really what we're
that's
talking
very
about.
Timely.
Yeah.
That is
Sorry?
very timely, because that as part of the theme for my show, the whole kind of concept is to transform fear to move to freedom. Because with fear is such a paralyzing energy that if we're going to thrive on this planet as a species, we're going to have to learn to get along and transform some of our fears that are blocking us from thriving.
We're not meant to spend all that time in this flight-fight sort of syndrome and freeze syndrome, but some of us, and I include myself in this, spend a lot of, and I certainly, when I think back to before 1991 and even after for a long period of time, my first response was always to shut down and to freeze. And I then started to realise that it had come from even before I was born, that first response, that's the first survival response that develops in utero, but we meant to move it on. But if the factors come in, and it can become sort of at even a cellular level, everything that we do, first of all, it's like I get stuck and I can't speak, and I sit there with I call it my fear paralysis smile.
I like it. I like it.
You want me to do what? Okay, and it's sort of like, and that's become, and so can we move that? And it's so for some of us so ingrained in everything we do, and if we can understand that really fundamental level about what it is for some of us, or why it's come back at times of stress or trauma, and how we can use movement to move through that, so that I can unlock my emotions, I can unlock my mind through unlocking the body.
Absolutely. And can you imagine, I mean, all of the amazing gifts and inventions and discoveries and whatever would happen if people were living their best lives. Like we're able to bring forth their ideas, to speak, to create, to move, I mean, it would be a different world.
And not to be afraid of what someone's going to say to you.
Exactly.
Or they say, oh, your idea is stupid. Well, they might think your idea is stupid, and they've got a right to think that.
Yeah.
But how some of us will respond or react so much to that, so we're so afraid of doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, and if we can move past that and say, well, you have a right to your idea, as do I.
Yes, exactly. And the wonderful thing about it is it takes a lot of good ideas before you get a great idea. So
that's right.
Bring them on, and I mean, that's what brainstorming is all about, is bringing forth all of what everybody has to offer. It's kind of like the smorgasbord of life, You might not like every dish on the table, but there's going to be something there that you will like. But we can't know if people are stuck in fear and not actually standing up and being who they really are. So,
and then there's the next part, of course, which is maybe I'm not stuck in the frozen fear, but I'm stuck in the wanting to run away and that sort of fear, or the anger and the attack mode. So can I actually get out of that? Or even another part of that, which is submission, always giving way to other people and submitting to them. And we live in this world where, so many of us submit, and, I sometimes look, why do we tolerate abusive relationships? Why do we tolerate this? And what it is inside of us that's got that pattern that starts to say, all right, I'll just give way, and I'm going to put up with this terrible behaviour instead of walking out the first time it happens to you.
And the thing is, you've got both things, but they're both the same symptoms. The submissive, and then there's the attack. They're attacking to prevent people from coming close and attacking the world. Like these are habits, and they can be changed, but we have to understand that it's actually happening first of all.
So when I look at it through reflexes and through that's a Moira, what we call a Moira response, and I need to, as a baby, move through that, because babies do this same sort of thing, and can I learn to understand the world? And it's called the circle of security and the circle of safety. And as you see babies, they move out and they come back, and eventually their circle becomes bigger and bigger. Now, some of us stay stuck here, or you've got some people who are running around all over the place and having no idea and never really learn how to be safe in the world frantically, and some people who never learn safe in the world by locking themselves down.
Right.
So can I learn this or not, or what's happening in my body or in my posture and in my control? So that's really what I'm working on.
The whole point of this movement and rhythmic, understanding is it feels like it's very holistic. Like you're talking about the brain, the body, in the whole sphere of life. It's not just reading something and saying, oh, I understand that. It's actually bringing it in and practically applying it.
Many of us have learned to disconnect ourselves from our body.
Sure.
And certainly I had done that, and say, what's it feel like? Normal.
Yeah.
What's normal? I don't know. Normal.
Yeah. No, we don't know. We're not, sometimes we totally disconnect, because for many people, it was a coping mechanism. It hurts, and then you block all feelings because sometimes you had joy, but there was followed by hurt. So you don't even want to feel the joy anymore because you have a feeling it's a precursor to some real pain. So it's a terrible mind program.
It's subtle and you can't get out of it. And so can we change that pattern and move on? So it's so interesting sometimes tracing how these things develop in our system or not. You just accept it and say, let's move on if we can. And
well, you are yourself are a very good testimony to living your life after having this discovery, getting past your stress and depression. But have you seen it in other people? Like, have you seen anything significant we can share with the audience that you really know was surprised you, or it was something that wasn't really what you thought would happen, or? Because the working with the vets is really awesome to me. I didn't know, that part is cool.
I think, I guess over the years I've had, sometimes it's a really slow process for people.
Yes.
And sometimes it seems to be really fast. And children, I find working with children, it's a lot faster than working with adults.
Sure.
There's not nearly as many layers going on there. But, I can remember once I was working with a girl in Singapore, and she'd broken her arm. And the doctor who had repaired the arm had done a really bad job.
Oh dear.
And she was about 5 or 6, I guess, and she had to learn to be left-handed because the right hand, there was really a lot of damage. And so the parents had brought her to see me, and we were working away, and she came in one day and she said to me, Moira, I've been thinking about this. I said, yes. She said, I've got a goal. I guess she was 6. I went, oh, really? She said, yes. My brain slows down so my hand can keep up.
Wow.
So I tell you, kids have taught me more than anybody else on this entire planet. And I went, really? And she said, yes. And so we did whatever we did in that session, which I really can't remember. And she turned around and she said, at the end, she said, that's okay now. I don't need to come back. It's all okay now. I went, great.
Wow.
Because, when kids come in, I attempt to talk to them and say, what's your goal or what's your intention? What would you like to do differently to what you do now?
Yeah.
And she's been a few times, and then she came in. She said, I've been thinking about it. And I went, okay.
She knew. She knew what she needed. And isn't that amazing?
You give kids this opportunity to work it out for themselves in their language, and you just accept it, and they work it out for themselves, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we can learn a lot from them. I say the future looks so bright when I see some of these kids today who are, just speaking from, they're just speaking. And it's not, some people say, well, we've learned to listen. Partly that, but they're just speaking. They're more confident. Some kids are more confident today than I've ever seen in a generation. Yes. We had kids that were confident, but not we weren't there consciously to the point where these kids know that they know. It's not just,
However, on the other hand, I also think there are more and more kids who have absolute no confidence.
Yeah.
There seems to be more of these kids who don't know how to negotiate the world, and this victim stuff, and so this not teaching them how to be safe.
Well, there's children who have incredible intelligence, but they don't have awareness of their environment. They don't have social skills. They don't know how to interact in a polite way with the world. How do I make this happen? They don't know. They don't have the skills. They're not being taught, and some of that I think is to do with a bit of I had somebody on the show a while ago, and we were talking about this, and I just don't remember who it was, but it was to do with that sense of sometimes because the parents are not that intelligent or gifted, and so when their child is, they put them on a pedestal and they think that they don't need any guidance, and that's just the opposite. I mean, they need even more guidance because they are going to be functioning in the world in a different capacity.
All children need to be taught how to live in the world.
Yeah.
And some of them are not getting this now, and it's very, and they just left floundering.
Yeah, they are, and it's, they might be offensive to people, that teachers and whatever. It's hard to deal with them, and that's why I think it's great that we're having these kinds of conferences, and just even having the show for people who can't go to the conference, to learn from you and to know that there's tools available, and many of these could be in their area, and they can access the book for sure. They can get on Amazon, which is
they could get on Amazon. Yes.
Yeah.
The other parents, the other extreme is those helicopter parents, the ones who will not leave their children alone.
Yeah.
Things, and you go, just leave them be.
Yeah. Let them figure this out for themselves. Let them play. Yeah, I know. We do, and that's why it's so important to have these kinds of informative shows and these information coming forward. The thing I always find interesting is that for many generations, basically parenting was taught by the parents. So if your parents taught you taught it was repeated. And I think what happened is, because some of the parenting was not, they did the best they could, let's put it that way, but it wasn't great. And so a lot of people started to, my generation and younger, and maybe a bit before mine, were starting to be more aware and looking at options, but we didn't know. So it still is a bit of a trial and error. It's pendulum swings. There were always people that the parents wanted to be friends with their kids instead of being parents, and that doesn't work. I mean, they'll have their friends. They need a parent. So, and that's my personal observation, not
reasonably accurate myself.
Well, that's good. That's very good. Well, before we wrap this, what's that?
Very accurate.
Well, I've been on the planet a little while too, and I've had my observations of my own children and watching things, and I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm definitely aware of what seems to work and what doesn't. But also the thing is, what works for me or might work in my life might not work for you, and that's the beauty of knowing what your choices are. Like, this is available. Brain Gym, the book, Movements That Heal, which is available on Amazon. Go to the conference if you wish, and meet Moira in person, and many of the other.
I'll sign it, but even the Kindle, I'll sign you Kindle.
Very good, very good.
Whatever it is, I don't know. It's not available on ebook, so.
Well, the fact that it's out there, and that the information is being shared, and I always think about the collective consciousness. So the more things are shared, there's that 100 monkey concept. It becomes more accessible to all of us, and that's a wonderful time. It's a wonderful time to be on the planet. As I started the interview that way, I think that's how I'd like to conclude. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Moira?
No, thank you for having me, and it's good that we've got programs like this available now, as an alternative to the other stuff that we're dished up with.
This is the truth. I always say, there's no accident that the mainstream media called it programs. That's basically what they were. And so just to be cognizant of it, and not that there's anything right or wrong, but that's just a reality. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time, Moira, and I'm glad you're here in Canada and going to be sharing with us in Banff in September 23rd to the 27th. To everyone who's watching, please like this video, share it with your friends. You never know who's going to benefit from knowing that this information is available. And subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get all the updates whenever they, as soon as they come out. So this is exciting, as I say. Until next time, take care.
Wasn't that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetreal.chattinwithcatherine.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.